Hello YouTube, this is PrettyBabs25. In this tutorial, I'll be talking about introduction to knitting and crochet. If you've never knitted anything before or crocheted, then it is best to work on a thicker yarn with thicker needles. And the reason is because it will be easier for you to work with. Now this is 4-ply. But it gets bigger than this. I'm just using this as a demonstration today. So to begin with, I'm going to show you how to chain. And the first thing you want to do before you begin your chain is you want to do a slip knot. And the way that you do a slip knot is you simply turn the yarn into a loop like this. And then you take the yarn and you pull it through the loop like this. And before you get your hook inserted, just make sure it slips out like that. And try it a few times before you start chaining so you can get used to the feel of the yarn making a slip knot. And once you've gotten the feel for it, you're going to take your crochet hook and insert into the knot. And there are a few different methods of holding. My favorite method is going through the pinky and putting my finger straight forward like this. But if that doesn't work for you, another way is you can go through these two fingers and hold like this, and then pinch the yarn like this. Either of those methods, you want to pinch the yarn right here so you can get a hold of it. And then you make the chain by simply grabbing the yarn and pulling through. And this is going to be your foundation for a crochet project. What I suggest doing is doing swatches to start out with. So I'm going to start over doing the slip knot, pulling through that loop, making sure it's a loop and not a knot. Or that it's a slip knot and not simply a regular knot. And then you pull through to make your length of whatever it is you're making, be it a scarf or a swatch. And for this, we're going to chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So once you're done chaining, and you've figured out which way is your preferred method of holding the yarn, and you've gotten used to it after doing it a few times, you're going to skip the first chain and do what's called a single crochet into the first chain. And the way you do that is you go in the loop, the top loop, yarn over, and pull up a loop, and there should be 2 stitches on the loop. Then you take and grab the yarn again, and you pull through both loops. And that is a single crochet. And then you simply continue single crocheting to the end of the row. So what's good about using these larger hooks is it makes a nice lacy look, and you can make a really lovely scarf to start out with, simply using 4-ply yarn and a size L crochet hook. After you've finished your first row of single crochet, you're going to want to chain 1 to start the next row, and then single crochet into the next stitch and continue single crocheting all the way across. And then repeat that for the length of your swatch or scarf. And just to show you how lacy it is when you use a larger hook, this is a smaller hook, this is a size I, and it's on the same yarn. It's also smaller, and the stitches are smaller, and there's no lace to it. Not a lot anyway. So what I suggest is making a nice scarf for your first project. And just a quick recap, whenever you get up to that corner stitch, make sure you chain 1 and then work a single crochet into the next stitch. And don't forget to single crochet into that chain that you made on the previous row, and that'll give it a nice square. And if you see that you've missed or it starts coming in on the side, just take it out and start over for that row that you missed your stitch in. So next I'm going to demonstrate how to do a cast on to begin knitting. In knitting, you will want to, instead of starting at the end here, you need to sort of guesstimate how far back you need to go for your cast on. You want to go in that direction. And if we just cast on 10 stitches, it's not going to be too much. You can measure an inch for each stitch if you want to be precise. And if you have a lot left over, you're going to want to cut it, and I'll show you that in just a second. So we do the slip knot the same way we would if we were crocheting. And you want to pull that through, and then to make sure it's a slip knot, not a regular knot, just do it again. And then you want to put your needle into the slip knot. So this is the basic cast on for the knit stitch. You want to take 2 fingers and put it between the 2 strands of yarn and grab it with these 2 fingers here. And then pick it up with your needle on the strand of yarn closest to you, and again on the strand of yarn closest to you, and pull it through that loop. and that's your first cast on. And we're going to cast on 10 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, and again, closest to you, through the loop. Closest to you, through the loop. And that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you one more time, and then we will move on to the knit stitch. Putting your 2 fingers through the 2 strands, grabbing the strands with these 2 fingers, picking up this stitch and picking up that stitch through the loop and pulling down. And you might want to practice this a few times before you move on to actually knitting. And that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, to do the basic knit stitch, well, actually, before we move on here, this is a bit long, and you don't want to get this confused with your working yarn, so we'll just take our scissors and cut that down. To begin doing the knit stitch, you want to take your working needle and put it into the loop there and make sure it's all the way through. And you don't want to split the yarn. And then you take your working yarn and you go over and you pull it through. And that is a basic knit stitch. So again, needle through the back, yarn around the working needle, pulling it through the stitch, removing it from the other hook. And you just continue doing that for a basic knit stitch. And after you've practiced your basic knit stitch for a little while, you will want to learn the purl stitch. And the purl stitch is a little bit different. Instead of coming on the side here like you would a knit stitch, you want to go in front like this. And you take the yarn and you wrap it in front and go behind the stitch in the opposite direction. So once again, through the front, look like this. You wrap the yarn in front and then pull it behind and off your stitch. And then if you convert back and forth between the knit and the purl stitch, you'll make what's known as a stockinette stitch, and it's the basic stitches for knitting. So again, the knit stitch through the back, wrapping the yarn over, pulling the stitch off, and you simply continue knitting. And this is what it will look like. And as you can see, since we're using larger needles, it makes a lovely lacy look to it. And the bigger the hook that you use, the lacier the stitch will be. And that's true for the crochet as well. And I advise focusing on either knit or crochet to start off with, so it doesn't confuse you too much. But do practice with both and see which one that you like the best, whether it be knit or crochet. After you've completed how long you would like your swatch or scarf, you're going to want to bind off. And for this project, you'll want to bind off on a knit row. So I'm just going to purl this last row really quickly. So to bind it off, you're going to knit one stitch, knit the next stitch, and then grab the previous stitch and pull it over the last stitch you made. And just continue like that. Or if you're not confident, you can use your fingers to just pinch that stitch and pull it over, and you have more control. Oops. Then just pick it back up if you lose it. That's why you probably should use your fingers if this is your first time binding off. And then after you have that last loop, you just pull your needle out. You can make that loop bigger and cut the yarn. And then pull that tail through. And you can just sew that in with a yarn needle each of those tails. And that's the stockinette stitch on size 11 needles. And thank you for watching.